But the one thing that we don't want to forget, speaking of pushback, free speech on campus, University of Virginia expelling the med student Battacharya because in a Q&A panel on a panel of microaggression, after the panel, there was a Q&A discussion, and he pressed one of the teachers or a few of them for about 5 minutes on what constitutes microaggressions. Do you have to be a member of a marginalized group in order to be a victim of microaggressions? There was a debate. There was some pushback. The school, there was someone who had organized the event, a urologist, a professor, filed a professional concern card about the student with the faculty because they didn't like the way this student was aggressive and argumentative with the staff. It was unheard of and just discourteous. The university did nothing shy of a Kafkaesque investigation, psychological torture of this student. They told him to go get counseling. Then they required him to get counseling before coming back to school. Then they expelled him and said, you can't come back until next year or whenever unless you get counseling. Then when he's out, they get a non-trespass order from the police without telling him why. And apparently these are not just allegations. This seems to be the facts established, or at the very least, the facts in the judgment. The school then moved to dismiss on a Rule 12b-6, failure to state a claim. The kid had filed a claim, the lawsuit on 4 bases. One was violation of First Amendment rights. The other one was conspiracy. There were a few weak claims in the case.
They were just the free speech claim was what it was all about.
Well, but my question is this: so the conspiracy to interfere with business perspectives was dismissed, but he can proceed on the First Amendment claim, and he can proceed against some of the faculty personally. My question was: is there not any charges that he could have gone with, like psychological abuse, harassment? I mean, a First Amendment violation for what they did to this kid. The other charges, I thought, I don't know the law on them in any meaningful depth, but they did seem like stretches. But it sent like they wronged this kid in a much greater sense than just a First Amendment violation. And I was surprised there was no claim for damages, psychological abuse. Could he not have included a claim on that basis?
He could have, and at least as part of the harm from the free speech violation. But it's just not a usually recognized harm for free speech violations. And it's generally tough to prove due process violations against campuses. They give campuses a ridiculous amount of deference. They're only started to push back on all the insanity from the sort of campus rape moral panic that was creating all kinds of due process violations for a substantial time period, probably going to come back. But so generally it's tough to sue on those grounds. Free speech is usually the only grounds, but it was fantastic that he was even able to survive a motion to dismiss, which he'll get into discovery, get into a lot of information, probably show that it was pretextual, as he alleged.
Can you imagine what he's going to get by way of internal correspondence among this staff? First thing first, Battacharya, he's of Indian descent or East Asian descent. He is by their own standards a member of a marginalized group in North America, if you go by these standards. That image of him walking into the meeting that was convened to discuss his enrollment status, for which he was given 3-hour notice. You look at the faces in there, and it looks like it looks like people who are there to psychologically torture you. And
a lot of these people are deans and high-ranking administrators. I mean, I dealt with this in law school. Everybody that was the main reason for the burgeoning, exploding cost of tuition in the United States is because of all these bureaucrats that we've been hiring, not because of teachers or anybody else, not because they're helping students meaningfully. And it's all these bureaucrats are all a bunch of wokesters, and they justify their job the more wokester BS they come up with and nonsense they come up with. And that's what you see a bunch of. I dealt with one in law school, just a total nitwit. Won't call out her name, but man, she was. But so it's great to see him sue. But it shows the insanity of it. And here's the real danger: they're starting to take what they're doing in educational institutions. They're extending to professional licensures, and they're starting to define medicine as having the right views. As you can't really do your job for your patients and understand them unless you have the right opinions.
And I'll tell you from experience, I've had a lot of doctors who were the biggest a-holes on earth, but they're still damn good doctors. And this idea, I mean, that the pretext was that he was argumentative with the staff and confronted them with contradictions apparently, and they're worried about what could be his behavior on the ward. This is a med student who's a young kid who's and his correspondence. When I say, and we've said this before, draft everything as though a judge is going to read it one day. Every correspondence coming from this kid to the university was actually drafted in such a way that it would be very difficult to interpret it with malice, where he says, is it normal that you give students 3 hours to prepare for a meeting to discuss their enrollment? And, and his response to them saying, we didn't like the way you talked. And he says, I was very glad they gave me 5 minutes. I enjoyed the discussion. It didn't even read sass or snark when things can so easily be read as sass or snark. This kid sounds like he has a great mental framework. I may be biased, and call me that if you want, because I think this kid was wronged hardcore from what I read. And the staff looks like they were out to punish anyone who would dare defy them publicly, because it's no greater shame than having your views questioned. But I wanted him to. I wanted like $1 million in damages. What sanctions can he get for First Amendment violations? Is it declaratory judgment, nominal damages?
They've delayed his ability to get medically licensed. So, I mean, the main thing is he's protecting his medical license by bringing the suit, so that they can't use this against him later on to get that medical license. But the second objective could be the financial damage to the delay of his medical licensure. So, obviously doctors make a lot of cash. So you look at that, that's probably a decent amount. So but I think he's doing it mostly on principle grounds. He seems to be that, he kind of seemed aware that this process could be kind of crazy, would just try to assert his rights. And if it went AWOL, he would protect his rights. And he seems to be that kind of individual, though I don't think he was out to create this situation. That's for sure. And I think he himself was semi-shocked at how insane the process has become.
Well, now I see the flashing light above my head. Too bad you're going to deal with it for 9 more minutes. I'll keep my head up. No, the one thing where I was sensitive to is that the school alleged that he had made intimidating or threatening comments on social media without providing them. And so, I can understand. People go to social media and they say something jokingly that doesn't translate as a joke. But the fact that they didn't provide that leads me to believe that it doesn't exist. The school would have provided that somewhere in the correspondence.
Your definition of intimidation. I mean, I dealt with it in law school 20 years ago. So I had a case where I was part of a public interest project where I believe my client was innocent. They didn't like him because of, his political demographics. And, and so I got into a big disagreement and ended up, leaving the program, leaving that particular part of the program. Because they couldn't handle disagreement. It was one of these, all they would ask you is, well, how does that make you feel? How does it make you feel? And I was like, you guys being idiots and letting an innocent person fry? How do you think it makes me feel? So I'll never forget, this one guy looked at me and goes, oh my God, you have no respect for authority. And I was like, yeah, so, but I mean, that's what these people are accustomed to. They're just deference to whatever their moral virtue signaling is. I've been following some of the University of Virginia law's comments on the Chauvin case, and you can see they're just walking on eggshells. All these law professors want to make sure they don't offend or upset anybody and say exactly the right thing. And it's just pitiful and sad how bad our academy has become. The Enlightenment principles have been lost, and we're training idiots and developing idiots.
I'm gonna and shout out to Gad Sad and Dave Rubin in their books. Don't Burn This Book. Dave Rubin and Gad Sad, Parasitic Mind. It actually, it didn't inspire me. It did make me a little more courageous to stop pussyfooting around, saying things the way they need to be said directly. Let's see here. We got Cleopatra says, I may have been out with Winston when you discussed this. What do you think of the Navy admitting to seeing pyramid-shaped UFOs? Cleopatra, that will be on an off-platform discussion, maybe on locals. One thing actually, so Battacharya, it's going to proceed to discovery. It's going to proceed, and I'm going to be following it because that one irritates me personally.
If they're smart, they'll settle it before the discovery gets developed.
And it would be a public apology and a written apology and some monetary compensation.